Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. We're going old school with Kevin Graham. This is the original lineup. Kev, 4 years ago, around the kitchen table talking about Celtic, and we're still here.
I'm still in a kitchen. You're in a studio, I'm in a kitchen. That's the... When you get lemons, you make lemonade, eh?
So we're keeping it real. We're keeping it real. Yes, we are. Yeah, the old kitchen tapes. We've gone through a lot of different changes as a football club since that very first episode 4 years ago. And now we're facing what could be called old foes in Ferencváros. I think that a Celtic State of Mind are blessed because we've got Kevin McCluskey in our ranks, and Kevin's based in Hungary, and he gives us the lowdown on Ferencváros. I always think back to last season, Kevin, was that the beginning of the end, that result for Neil Lennon?
When I was doing some research last night on this game, I was having a look back at the Ferencváros game, and we absolutely dominated them. We absolutely dominated them that night, and we had 28 shots at goal. And after the game, you've obviously got Neil Lennon's infamous rant after the game about players not wanting to be there, and that was the beginning of the end of Neil Lennon's time at Celtic. But then you've also got like if you have a look at it now, 12 months down the line, what a downsizing of the team compared to the team that we had 12 months ago. And this team that's coming up against this Ferencváros side, who have probably improved like in the last 12 months, the differences of where the two clubs are is absolutely frightening. We're playing a club today who managed to get through 3 Champions League qualifiers and eventually got dropped into the Europa League. And this is going to be a tough game, but if I was being really, really realistic, and I was realistic when this draw was made, on paper we are where I expected us to be at this point. 0 points, bottom of the group, going into a double header against Ferencváros to see who can either finish second or finish third. More than likely, it looks like finishing third because Betis and Leverkusen are far too strong for both us and Friday. But yes, 12 months ago, this was probably the beginning of the end of Neil Lennon. And it'll be interesting to see how far we've come or how far we've actually fallen in the next 90 odd minutes.
It definitely will, because I remember that particular night very well. We were obviously suffering a lockdown. We covered the game. It was Colin Watt was in the studio that night, as was Kevin Maguire, the country singer. He was in covering the game with us. We're sitting here, Kevin, and I can't be at the game due to passport issues. And we are well represented today, actually, at ACSOM, at Celtic Park today. So hopefully all the guys and girls enjoy the game that aren't joining us at the kitchen table, Kev, for that. But the big question is, where are we? How far have we gone, or how far have we regressed in that period? And I don't want to be negative, because we are obviously in the midst of a rebuild. But talking to Kev, over the last 7 days or so, and actually we've been talking to him about Ferencváros since the draw was made. What he's suggesting to me is that Ferencváros are in the midst of their own rebuild, in that obviously they're going to enter this game with a different manager. But what they've not done, although they've maybe lost one of their more effective players, they've supplemented their squad. They've added to it. It's not as though the wholesale changes that we're seeing today. I think the wee quirk that I was reading earlier was that the only player that's going to start tonight that started 14 months ago is Callum McGregor. And that just shows you how much of a turnaround we've had in terms of staff, Kev. But we're facing a side that cannot be dismissed, like you say. I mean, they're stronger, arguably, than they were 14 months ago. Do you think Celtic are?
No, not on paper anyway. Not on paper. We might end up stronger by the end of the season, but today there's too many unanswered questions about the starting 11. There's too many questions. You look at our 11 14 months ago, we had guys that we knew what they could do. We're still on a learning curve with this team. So at the moment, we've got to say, well, we probably are weaker because of the amount of unanswered questions we've got about players, their consistency, whether they can do it at a European level. We've also got question marks over the manager, what he's trying to implement. We're probably in a bigger state of flux in Ferencváros, even though they've seemingly have adapted a more expansive type of play from Rebrov's time 14 months ago. But you've got a Hungarian journalist, not Kevin, who actually says he reckons this is the best Hungarian club side since the 1980s. We're not the best Scottish club side since the 1980s anyway. No. I think we can say that. But we want to get measured in Europe. The league, I saw comments coming in there, the league is more important. We can always win a league. It's a two-horse race. But you want to compete in Europe. And it'll be this game holds a massive interest for me today to see how far we've fallen or how far we've come and how far we've still got to go. We're in the middle of a massive rebuild. We can't be too negative about it because we're still in the early stages. But I did actually take a deep intake of breath when I saw this starting 11 against the starting 11 14 months ago.
I think there's a lot of really good points, and I'm going to try and post some of these questions, that, as you say, that are yet to be answered. I'm going to dip into the comment section as I always try to do. Paddy, yes, I did. You should have got an email. If not, I can confirm that's all organised. ACSOM is now selling merchandise, Kevin. It's on ACSOM.net, so get yourself over there. And that helps us to run the channel and run the channel as well as we possibly can. Jake Ryan, just before I bring your point up, let's bring the team up just for anyone who hasn't seen it. But in the, these days of modern technology, I'm sure everybody has seen a starting lineup of Hart, Ralston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Montgomery, McGregor, Turnbull, Abada, Rogic, Jota and Kyogo. The only change from the victory against Motherwell being the forced change of Montgomery in at left back for Bolingoli, who's not eligible to play in this afternoon's tie. Barkas is on the bench along with Bain, Scales, Beaton, Giacomakis, Ayeti, Soro, Johnston, Urigide, Shaw and Welsh. And I think every time we go into the European games, it highlights somewhat the nature of the squad or the lack of depth in the squad, because there's three players on that bench who, in Barkas, Urigide and Shaw, you wouldn't be confident in them coming into a game like this, simply because, Urigide and Shaw have not played a competitive game of football for Celtic, Kev. And Barkas, I think we've all seen enough to know that we couldn't count on him. So it does highlight the squad depth or lack of. But the one thing that is coming up quite a lot in the comments is around the inclusion of young Adam Montgomery. So the question I think that has to be posed would be around the inverted fullbacks. It looks as though we've abandoned that domestically over the last couple of games. Anyway, Kev, do you think that's a permanent thing? Ange doesn't seem like the type of manager who's going to change his philosophy or his style, but he seems to have adapted a wee bit by changing the fullbacks.
I think so. I think there's been a lot too much made out about Ange being this unshakable philosophy where you've actually seen that he can be quite adaptable. Yes, well, you always say we're going to play open attacking football, but there has been times where he's made changes during the game and changes before games with players when we've actually had options available. I just don't think that the two fullbacks can play the inverted fullbacks. I saw Bolingoli getting some praise for his performance against Motherwell. I think Bolingoli showed that he knew the system but just couldn't do it well. He knew what he was meant to do, but he just couldn't do it well. Montgomery is a converted winger to a left back. He is only there because we haven't got any other options there at left back. Anthony Ralston at right back, he's playing in the red. The good games that he's had this morning, he's been in that red zone. And what I'm meaning with the red zone is he won't get any better. he's playing at his top of his ability in that red zone. There's no really any more room for development. This is him pushing his ability level to its absolute maximum. So I think maybe Postecoglou, if he has changed the inverted fullback system, is doing it just because of the lack of options and the lack of talented options that we've got in the fullback area at the moment. And that's not to say Monty isn't a great talent, but I don't think he's a left back. Ralston, we know his limitations. We do know his limitations. He's going to go out there and try his heart out. We know that. But I think we can all know now that Juranovic is going to be the first choice right back when he comes back in. I don't think Ralston's let us down this season. I really don't. I don't think he has. I don't think Montgomery's let us down this season. But if we were 3 windows down the line and into this rebuild, Ralston and Montgomery are not playing fullback. And I think we've got to take that into account.
You know, I've come to realise, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we spoke about Ralston being the only right back. There was a level of concern there, Kev. I think he's allayed a lot of the fears, to be honest with you. And so far as we know, there are limitations there, but we know what he is capable of. And there's, as well as limitations, there's a fair amount of capabilities there as well. Mm-hmm. Do I think he's a first choice right back for Celtic? I don't. But he was the only choice at the beginning of the season. I think when Juranovic is back to full fitness, he will get the jersey. But I also think that Juranovic probably is suitable for the inverted fullback, but we don't have someone on the left-hand side. So that might be one of the questions that needs answered in January, Kev. You know, do we go out and buy someone more suited to that particular position? And once we get another one in place on the other side, do we revert back to this plan that Ange has had? And in the meantime, is he going to adapt? Because he realises that Ralston and Montgomery are not that effective in that particular role. We've seen it against Leverkusen. That was where I think it was really highlighted when you're playing a quality side, Kev, because there was far too much exposure of the back two as it became at the back. I guess, sorry, on you go.
But then again, the famous photo that Russell posted, that was the two players making an error. Both of them shouldn't have been in that area. That is the two players. That's not Postecoglou's fault. That's the two players making bad decisions on the pitch. And like it's the same with Turnbull made the mistake as well. Postecoglou can only do so much, and when he puts someone onto the park, and I'm sure that Postecoglou would have pointed out to both fullbacks, by the way, you shouldn't have been in that area together.
Yeah.
And maybe the inverted fullback, because you think you actually see it on at Motherwell, Ralston was further forward than Bolingoli. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as if there has been a case of one goes and the other one's hanging back.
It's got to be staggered. Yep.
We're going down one wing or we're going down the other wing, and one fullback's going to need to stay back until we get the legs and the quality of fullback it's needed to actually play those roles. I don't think Montgomery and Ralston have let us down one little bit.
You happy with him as backup, Kev?
I think Ralston. I'm happy with Montgomery for backup. Ralston's 23, and what I'm really pleased for is Ralston. If he doesn't get another year at Celtic, he's going to get a decent move on these last couple of months. Probably a move to a higher level club that he would have got if he would have left this summer. And I'm pleased for him for that.
100%, Kev. And one thing I'm going to say here, what I found really interesting, and yeah, it's a shameless plug for your new show, and I call it new because it's been relaunched. Scream of Celica was launched actually as an audio podcast some time ago. And when we were going through the pandemic, when we were going through the lockdown, we started broadcasting it as a dial-in. There is going to be an element of ACSOM that will remain dial-in because live and interactive often it's the only way you can do it, and that's fine. But we are creating fully produced content on the channel, and one of the shows is Scream of Celica, which you host. What I found really interesting in the first episode is you are interviewing a Dundee United fan in Johnny Proctor, who is an excellent author. Go and check him out. All the links are underneath that particular video. And he was speaking about being really chuffed with the performances of Ralston when he was at Dundee United. So it is always interesting to get a perspective from another supporter and someone who actually watched Ralston playing for United. Now, by the way, he's probably, and I think Dundee United are doing really, really well this season, but he's probably got to that stage where if he's going to earn a move, Kev, it may not just be to a fellow club in Scotland. I think he potentially will move elsewhere.
I think the last couple of months, and he will get used between now and the end of the season. I think we can. I do reckon that he's now looking, instead of moving back to St Johnstone or Dundee United or Motherwell, somewhere like that, he's maybe looking at a move to the English Championship, which wasn't on the cards last summer. And fair play to the fella. I do love him. I do like him. He's like that big lovable family dog that you've got, that you love to bits, but you know eventually you're going to need to let go. I don't think he'll let us down today. He never let us down in Betis when that last 15 minutes he started dragging us up the park.
Because that was one of the games, I think, Kev, that his own standards had dipped a bit, but we know that he had been fighting illness a few weeks before it. But his attitude shone through because he didn't give up, and he actually came on to a good game in the last 10, 15 minutes. Like you say, he got a goal. Jake Ryan comes in, makes the point against Leverkusen. The inverted fullback tactic didn't work. Frimpong often left with loads of space on Monty's side. Hopefully not a repeat today. I don't think there will be a repeat today. I think we've actually learned that lesson, that the personnel don't fit that particular part of the system, Kev, and we've reverted to them as more traditional fullbacks. I mean, to have two fullbacks up the park doesn't always result in danger, because obviously there was a certain game in 1967 when Tommy Gemmell was laid on by a certain Jim Craig. And if that move had broken down, I'm sure they'd have been in deep trouble with Jock Stein. Now, a big question. You and I have spoken since the very first episode about Celtic in Europe, European aspirations and how they've changed, even in the 4 years that we've been discussing it, Kev. And the conversations that we had time and time again normally resulted in you saying Celtic are no longer a Champions League club. I wasn't willing to accept that. And particularly when we had Brendan Rodgers at the helm, because when we started ACSOM, Brendan Rodgers was the manager of Celtic. And I wasn't willing to accept that. But in time, with the results, and with obviously the last 12 months in particular, to point towards and focus on, the kind of momentum swiftly changed to we are no longer a Europa League club. And I heard Russell talking about this the other day. I'm not willing to accept that. I don't think that because we've got a third European competition that gives you more of a chance of European football beyond Christmas, which is something that should always be an objective for Celtic, Kev. You know, I don't think we should accept that we're no longer a Europa League club. But when you're coming up against, you know, Betis away from home, and, you know, barring that first 26 minutes where we looked very good, and then you're coming up against Leverkusen, they play you off the park, really. I mean, I know people disagree with that because we had plenty of chances. I'm in the camp where I just think there was a couple of gears that they could have clicked into if necessary. I'm not going to come away from a 4-0 defeat at home believing that we were in that game, Kev. You know, yeah, we did have a few chances. We were unlucky with the third goal. It wasn't a penalty. It was individual errors that lost us all 3 goals. You know, I get that, Turnbull and then Ralston ×2. But they beat us and beat us well at home. Are you at that stage, or are we putting it down to the fact that actually, under the circumstances, Ange Postecoglou probably shouldn't have got us this far this season?
I'm not downgrading my ambitions for Celtic Football Club one little bit, where I see today's game as a bun fight for third place in this group. The stats will just tell us there's two teams that are far better than the other 2 teams. That's it. Europa League, I think Ange, I've said before, I think Ange overachieved, managed to get us here. Just because of the mess of the club when they came to us. We've always claimed to be a Champions League club, and over the 9 in a row, the 4 quadruple trebles and all of that, we never really believed it. We've always been promised a man in suits, then we've turned up and we've got a suit in your size, away shop and Primark. And this is where it is. I want Celtic to be in the top, like getting to the latter stages of European competition. Whether that's the last 16 in the Champions League, the last 8 of the Europa League. I want us to aim for that ambition, but I don't think the board have got that ambition. And the board's ambition is just to stay that little bit in front of Rangers every time, say, oh, we're fantastic, we've won another league title, give us your money. I think that's where we are. And I really wish that the club would come out and go, look, we might lose a couple of league titles, but we're aiming to actually be the last 8, last 4 of the Europa League every single year, or the last 16 in the Champions League every single year. That's what we're aiming for. But they won't do that. That's bad for business. I'm no downsizing my ambitions whatsoever, but I'm looking at this game in reality, like I looked at the AZ game in reality, and I went, look, if we drop into the third competition this year, I'll be happy for this year that we're there. But going forward, no. If we're sitting here talking the exact same in the same position in 12 months' time, then I'll go, well, I'm not too happy with that.
See, the big thing, Kev, just sitting here, us two, we're season ticket holders. We've been season ticket holders for the same length of time, having first got a season ticket in the Hampden year, which we look back fondly on, which is bizarre because we were absolutely rank rotten that season. But we still look back fondly because it's your first year as a season ticket holder, and there's always going to be fond memories of that. However, shouldn't we know what the club's vision is? Because I don't know what it is.
No, well, if you look at the accounts that they released a couple of weeks ago, seemingly it's to finish second in the league and sell players. that is what their vision. That was highlights of that. They've already came out and says they want to sell players for big amounts of money. There's no ambition in that. That just looks good on the balance sheet. That just looks good when other clubs want to do business with you. You look last night, you've got Kieran Tierney and Odsonne Edouard playing in the English Premiership.
Took the words out of my mouth. Yep.
You look at that team that started 14 months ago. You've got Moy now starting for Southampton. You've got Ayer absolutely starting for Brentford as well. You've got Olivier Ncham playing really well for Swansea.
Christie.
And Christie playing really well for Bournemouth.
Frimpong played that night. Was Frimpong playing against Ferencváros that night?
El Hamed. El Hamed was the right back that night. So we went through a period of downsizing, and it's not been negative to actually nod your head and go with Huv and saying this is going to be a tough gig. But I think we've shown enough in the 2 games in Europe this season to go, we take our chances and give this a go. Then there's no reason that we can't get the 3 points. There isn't any reason that we can't get the 3 points because of moments that we had in Betis and also at home at Celtic Park against Leverkusen. But we've got to take those moments, and we can't have any brain farts. We can't have any brain farts whatsoever, but we've got to take the moments when we get them. But at home, we are going to get those moments, and we need our front three to take them.
You spoke about a brain fart there, Kev, and I think the biggest one against Leverkusen was David Turnbull. He seemed in 2 minds when he had the ball at his feet, and he decided virtually to do nothing with it. It was almost as if he didn't want to put his toe through it. He didn't want to knock it out the park. And he kind of hesitated for a split second, Kev, and he eventually lost possession as a result of that. Over the last few weeks, he's come in for some criticism, David Turnbull, but by God, he showed what he can do against Motherwell. I mean, that goal that he scored, arguably he's the only player in the park who could do it. I mean, the outside of the boot, into the side of the net, tremendous strike. And I think that, it dispels some of the thoughts around whether or not he and Rogic can play in the same team. I've been one of the guys saying that, Kev. Rogic sets up the first goal, playing a pass that only he could make. Turnbull scores a second, probably with a shot only he can take. So what's your thoughts? Another question, can they play together? Can they play at this level together?
I don't think the balance is there with them, and I think even Postecoglou admits that. I think he admitted that in his interview yesterday when he says he wants to rotate them, but he hasn't got the bodies at the moment to rotate them. You look at Tam before the international break. He came off the bench and set up the goal at Aberdeen. He had been woeful in the 4 games before that. The game against Dundee United was one of the worst games I've ever seen him perform in a Celtic jersey. Nothing came off for him. David Turnbull, I think that was his 7th goal of the season. So Turnbull is contributing. But what was interesting, what Ange Postecoglou actually says, was that when they're physically at their peak, they can do the job that Ange wants them to do in the middle of the park. When they're not, there's a drop-off. And I reckon we saw a drop-off in that sort of, in the two of them, towards the end of the last, the last crunch of games in that international break. I think you saw them, they had just played too many games and their physicality had started to go. I don't think Turnbull, apart from the goal, was great on Saturday, but you don't take him off because he can do stuff like that. That's sometimes the reason that you're looking at substitutions. You go, why is Abada not coming off? Why is Turnbull not coming off? Because already this early in both their Celtic careers, they can pull something out the bag like Turnbull done. I mean, that's an important goal for us on Sunday.
Yeah.
That is Saturday, sorry. That is a big, important goal. We're so much in control of that game. If we didn't get a second goal, it's squeaky bum time. If we're only 1-0 up going into the last 10 minutes, that second goal completely kills that game of football. So that is a really, really important moment in Celtic season, getting that second goal, especially the way the other results actually went. So that's the reason that Turnbull's there. Rogitt's ball for Jota's for the first goal was unbelievable. For the first 30 minutes, again, that he was unplayable. But there's no many Celtic players could have played that ball. Actually, he's probably the only one that could have played that ball, and that's why he's in the team. But you also see the benefits of Beaton coming in at Pittodrie if you need that bit of steel. But as I says, long-winded answer, I think Postecoglou knows himself that unless they two are physically at the peak of their game, they can't do what he wants them to do.
You know, one of the things that came through there, had Turnbull not scored that goal, you still don't have 100% confidence that we're tight enough at the back, Kev. I think that's what you're alluding to. And if you're 1-0 up, there is always that threat at the back. Again, and I pointed it out in the post-match with Laura, my biggest concern is first half, there were 4 occasions where our inability just to clear the lines, and I'm not talking about let's play long ball football, right? But to clear the lines when you're in danger, that resulted in 4 occasions us losing possession or putting ourselves under unnecessary pressure. The first one was 2 minutes in when Joe Hart had to shimmy himself past the on-running Motherwell forward. I don't want to see that in my 6-yard box, Kev. Now, I'm all for free-flowing, entertaining football. I love it. I love watching football like that. I don't want to go back to the old Davy Bassett, long ball, winning headers and all that kind of stuff. But I also don't want to put us under pressure. Is that something that's still a concern for you, that we're still doing that?
I think it's always going to be a concern. I see it with teams who are far better than us, with better ball-playing defenders doing it as well, and I've still got my heart in my mouth, even if I'm not emotionally involved. You sometimes watch Man City, Atalanta, teams like that, and you go, what are you doing? Why are you actually playing the ball along the touchline? But it seems to be a part of the modern game, and the players are going to need to adapt to it. But what I would say is Cameron Vickers and Starfelt seem to be more inclined now to boot it out and ask questions later. I mean, Cameron Vickers had 11 clearances on Saturday, and they were just hoofs. He actually just got the ball away. So I think they're learning as well, and I think people are talking about the improvement in the Vickers-Starfelt partnership. I think it's because they're starting doing simple things more often.
Yeah, clearing the lines.
Over-elaborating maybe what Postecoglou's asking them to do.
If there's a pass on, great, absolutely. But if there's not, then go back in this horseshoe, this inverted horseshoe, until there's a pass on. Because the one occasion that Carter Vickers done it against Leverkusen, it created one of the best chances of the game for Kyogo. He should have probably scored 1-on-1 with the goalie, but it was a good save in the end. Another thing I want to mention, I know that we're running out of time, it's almost kick-off's almost upon us. The Albanian president, Ilia Meta, is going to be at the game today, along with a good friend of ACSOM, Rudi Vata. So hopefully he will enjoy the game. Hopefully all the ACSOM troops who are at the game enjoy it as well. Kev, give me a quick prediction before we kick off.
2-0 Celtic.
2-0 Celtic. Very confident. I would love to see it. If we keep a clean sheet, tremendous. Again, I'm going to say Celtic will score first. That's my prediction. So thank you, everybody, for getting involved in the comments field. And thank you once again to my old school comrade, Kevin Graham, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.